The Pomonal Recovery Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which the people of Pomonal live and work, the Jabberong and Eastern Maar peoples, and recognise their connection to the land and the waterways. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Welcome to the Pomonal Recovery Podcast, where our mission is to provide an ongoing platform to continue the work of telling our stories. The stories that we need to hear. The stories about our courage. The stories about our hopes. And the stories about our fears too. In short, this podcast aims to tell the stories that will help the people in this already remarkable town to get even closer to each other. It's a podcast where we can both celebrate our achievements and grieve about our losses. The podcast will hopefully become a forum full of helpful information and a tool for breaking down the barriers that sometimes divide us. I'm James Laidler, your host. On behalf of the Pomonal Community Resilience Group, welcome to episode 9, a conversation with Andrew Cross. So it's my great pleasure to have Andrew Cross here from the CFA and Pomonal in the studio, and he's come to talk to us a little bit about a whole bunch of interesting subjects, the state of play of the fire, a little bit about his story, and a bunch of other topics I think you'll find really important on some interesting aspects of living in Pomonal. But g'day Andrew, how are you going?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Let's just start off a little bit just by giving people a bit of a background of your life and how you bloody ended up in Pomonal, of all places, and as the Pomonal CFA safety officer in particular.
Nearly originally, spent 43 odd years at Ocean Grove, down on the beach. And the last couple of years I wished I was still there. It's been pretty horrid year, almost anniversary of 12 months since our maiden fire in February 2024, which badly affected Pomonal. From there, as Ocean Grove grew, I took an out route and ended up in the northeast of Victoria, up just north of Myrtleford, in a little valley between Myrtleford and Yakandanda, for those people that might know the northeast, and carried on my CFA membership from Ocean Grove through to a little place called Mudgegonga.
Mudgegonga, I've never even heard of that.
It's Aboriginal for rolling thunder.
All right.
So when the thunderstorms used to go through, they used to echo up the valleys towards Mount Hotham, and it's a magic sound actually. It just keeps going, and you think, oh yeah, good, it is going, as the thunder eases off. So after about 20 years up there, and I was captain of the Mudgegonga Brigade, and I became group officer for the Ovens group of brigades. My kids were here in Horsham, and we were at the stage of grandkids being about, and we just weren't seeing them. It's a fair trip, like 6 hours to come over here, and you get there and the grandkids would go, who's that? You'd be here a day or two and off you go again. You wouldn't see them for another 6 months. So Jackie and I decided that we'd move over closer to Horsham, and she picked out a spot here in Pomonal. And so we've been here 3 years at the end of March.
Okay.
It's been a great move, but we've dropped from 980 mil rainfall down to about 400 and half it, I reckon.
Yeah.
And so we've struck some dry years, and it's been pretty horrific, been horrific for everyone in the area, and it's still going at the moment. So I've farmed, been a rural fencing contractor. I've worked for parks, catching brumbies and rebuilding huts up in the high plains. Done a bit of work with Hancock's pine plantations while I was in Myrtleford, or in that area, and I've had a bit of an interesting career, but it's all been based outside and mostly in the bush.
Classic jack of all trades in a way.
I guess so.
A master of some?
I don't like painting.
Oh, you don't like painting?
No. But I can do most things to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you're 3 years into Pomonal, but you seem like you're a well-loved and quite enmeshed, person in the community. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found Pomonal and becoming part of the community?
When I first got here, I approached Steve Field, who's our captain nowadays, down at the Oval on one of the market days. And that was really good for a start. And he said, come along, join up. So I did, transferred from Mudgegonga to Pomonal, and within that one group, I realised, and Jackie realised too, that there's so many groups of people doing things in Pomonal. Tennis club, book clubs, stitch and bitch, or whatever they call it. All the things that go on. There's some talk about electricity grids, and Pomonal's really inclusive.
It's incredibly active.
Yeah.
I come from Warrnambool, and my perception of what was going on in Warrnambool was nowhere near the things that are going on here. It's a tiny little town. It's insane.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So the work I do with CFA, which is my main thing, it's about community. It's not about me. It's about trying to keep the community safe. The word resilience pops up, the resilience and the PPA, is how can we help people become more resilient? And I think it's preparation. There's been some magic work done after the fire in February a year ago, to get people into housing, and the whole system through the Resilience Committee is brilliant. Where I'd like to get people to be and think about their resilience is about where they live, about their gardens, about what they plant in their gardens. By that I mean the types of trees, and in the future how tall they might grow, whether they're eucalypts that shed leaves and bark and make a hell of a mess, or you keep your garden into natives that are short, are used to being pruned, because they in the bush naturally they're pruned by kangaroos, emus, whatever will chew away at them at given times. And having a defendable space around your property. Don't be too linked to the next door neighbours. Give yourself a chance. And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to promote, to becoming more resilient. It's not so much to rely on other people, but by making good decisions yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so say if you're a person, a family, or you're living by yourself in Pomonal, you own a house, and you're a bit confused about whether your place is sort of up to scratch and ready for fires or not. You haven't got the expertise, you haven't done the reading. What as a safety officer, what would you suggest could be some useful steps that a person in that position or people in those positions could do?
One of the things that I'm able to do is what they call a PAVS visit. CFA have a book about 1 million acronyms long, I reckon. And PAVS is personal advice visits by someone from the CFA. So I'm more than welcome to come around, and we've got a checklist, and we can just sit and talk to you about what you'd like to achieve, where we think you're safe with what you've done in your garden, or perhaps what else you could do in your garden. Things about when, it comes back to when you can't cope and decide to disappear late on a fire day, it's too late.
Yeah.
You've got to sit and make decisions with your partner or your families. If it's getting pretty tough and the fire danger's getting towards extreme level, as Matt Venn said as well, don't roll the dice. Make sure and go early.
Yep.
But if you're going early, make sure you've got a kit of gear and all your medicines and change your clothes and your phone charger. It's all there. It's all in the emergency stuff. Yes. What you can do.
So as a part of your visit, would you actually... So if someone was thinking they're going to stay and they had... would you then maybe give them a bit of an order and say, well, show us your box? You know, like... Or would you ask them, do you want to go through these things together, or...
I think our role, rather than checking what they've got personally, it's more to do with the outside around the house.
Outside, yeah.
I really do think so.
So if a person has questions about the plan, so they've written up a plan, but they want someone to sort of have a look at it, and is there anything the CFA can do with that?
Anyone that's got any questions can come and ask any of us at any time. Steve's phone number, the captain's, he's available. I'm sure we can dig up Matt Van, and there's quite a few people in the brigade that you can ask questions to, and hopefully we'll give you an answer that'll help you on your journey. If not, there's a myriad of information out there, but the main thing is access, getting out. Make sure you pick a way out that's in the opposite direction to where the fire is for a start. I've got great apprehension in people moving up towards Hall's Gap because the road's so, covered in trees and branches and right close to the road. And if a fire suddenly comes flicking out of the bush, you're in trouble. You can't see in smoke. They're the sort of things you've got to have at the forefront of your mind. So by going early, you avoid that. So don't leave late. Leaving late's a way to lose your life.
So is it possible that some people draw up a plan and they might be a little bit naive to what a fire does, like how it deoxygenates the landscape and how hot it actually gets, and in fact, you just said then you can't see.
That does happen. There's no doubt that deoxygenation. I've seen that before. You can be round behind a house taking cover, and all of a sudden the fire's taken all the oxygen from behind where you're keeping away from radiant heat. Things like I've seen dead animals tucked in round behind sheds and things, not burnt, and haven't had oxygen to breathe. And that happens more than you think. So you really need to remain indoors when things cook.
Seal your house properly.
Absolutely. You need to stay indoors for as long as you can. And then if the worst of the fire front's gone past, then you've got to start looking outside to see if there's embers burning on the deck or corners of sheds or in the gutters and the roof. And it's a self-help thing, but it's incredibly hard to do mentally. You've got to be super prepared to be able to manage that situation. And your pumps and all the auxiliary things that go with becomes part of a whole yearly thing. You don't just get to a bad fire day in December and go, hoik, I haven't started my pump yet.
Test your pump. Fuel goes bad after a period of time, you have to change it out.
Correct.
There's a bunch of stuff, isn't there?
And if you look around your house through the year, and Pomonal's known for its wind, it's a beautiful place, but it's a windy place. Watch where the embers, well, not embers so much, but I mean leaves off trees and garden refuse that blows around. It'll blow into pockets in the corner of your sheds or between a tank and a shed at your house. And they're the things you've got to be scratching out all the time. And also, obviously, gutters in the roof, cold leaves. We had a lot of leaf blow into gutters in the windstorms about a month after the fire in February. I could notice we had a storm and the gutters were overflowing quite readily, and I got up and said, Jacko, that's my partner, there's blockage in the spout, and sure enough, there was dead leaves in the spout. And that's just blown off the trees that have burnt when it's windy. So, yeah.
So do you recommend filling gutters with water if you can?
I think
That's a bit of a process, but...
it is a bit of a process. It's got to be super easy because unless it seals reasonably well, the water's going to run out. Then you've got to climb a ladder, usually, to put something up in there. They say balled up work socks are pretty good to jam in the end of a spout. Rubber stoppers and things, they sort of go in one day and they won't the next because they're dry or something. I think it's more observation. The other thing that's really important is to get some water from sprinklers spraying up onto your roof. We talk about this a bit. You can have sprinklers on your roof. A lot of people have sprinklers around the garden. May have a ring main around their house, and there's some good little sprinklers that don't use too much water with brass extensions on them, about 4 inches long, that spin and don't use too much water, but they wet down well.
They're the heavy droplet ones, are they? Like the Rainmaker ones?
There's a couple of different types, but these ones are more, they're either a twin or a tri sprinkler.
Yeah, I think I've seen
made
those.
out of brass or bronze, and you're thinking of the little spiral ones with the bigger drops.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
I think that might be a brand actually, Rainmaker. Puts them
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Around the garden, so it wets the walls, and some of that'll blow up along the gutter as well.
Yeah.
When you've got a single or a couple of sprinklers on the roof, if it's blowing hard, most of your water will blow away.
That's right, yeah. That's why I've always heard impact sprinklers directed at your house can be pretty effective too, because they shoot a good stream. So even if it's windy, they can still...
Yeah, so I think you've got to really think about that. Talk to a few different people, but that little moisture barrier and a bit of defendable space makes a big difference. And if you look up Robbins Road, Wildflower Court, there was a couple of houses up there that actually didn't burn down, and mainly it was because they had wet down, had sprinklers going. Or some of them had non-burnable gardens, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is your
Succulents.
your English, your oaks and things in the garden which don't ignite readily or pretty much don't. So it's a bit of a combination, and we've got to think about that when we're redeveloping our gardens. The linkage between the grass trees, they burn beautifully. They've just been designed to do that all their lives. If you've got a lot of them in your garden, next thing are the wattles, the acacias and things, all designed to burn. The banksia cones. The bush is designed to burn. And my theory on this, may be a bit rude for some, is that if you back your ass into the bush, expect it to burn. That's my theory.
And so if you've got a bit of land, is it good to start to think in terms of maybe can start to think of zones around your house?
Definitely.
So like your inner zone, and then you can push out. So those natives that you love, you can have them if you've got a big enough garden, but you got to think more zonally where they're positioned.
Yeah, definitely. And a fair bit of bark was delivered around town after the fires. The mulch I'm talking about. You don't want that anywhere near your house. It catches fire beautifully. We've got gravel around our house in the close gardens, bark further out, but it will catch fire. So think about that. It will catch fire for a couple of years afterwards until it breaks right down. So you've got your zonal thing is really good, and you don't want a tree or any plant that's going to burn and have direct flame contact with your house.
That's right.
Windows break, gaseous fuel and air from the eucalypts in the bush will get in, and it's very explosive.
Yeah. And then if you're going to lay stones, you've got to think about the radiant heat on the plant. So you're going to, if you want to have good plants, you're going to be a bit careful about plants going to actually handle that sort of heat as
Definitely.
well. and that your watering of those plants needs to be well considered.
Absolutely.
And
Becomes very time consuming.
it does, and maybe that's when people start thinking, if you're not a great waterer, that can I put in a system that's automatic and cheap, and you actually can. There's some really cheap options there, and little timers you can get for not much money.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. And one thing that maybe people should be aware of that would be good to just canvass as an idea is if you're going to leave and you want to wet down a house, that there are some pump options that are automatically started from an app on your phone.
Yes.
Expensive, but there's some choices there to weigh up. Could you talk a little bit about maybe that as an option?
I think it's a really good option. What we saw after the fires, mopping up in the ensuing days, that there was water running everywhere because risers off your tapping system were plastic had burnt through, and so there was water just running, wasting away, draining our tank up on the top of Springwood Hill Road corner, which could have meant that we'd run out of water to fill trucks and carry out other mopping up works because there was just so much water going to waste. So you've got to really think about that. I think where you need to be is not be too reliant on the mains pressure. If you're going to be here and you've got a house and you've got an asset that's worth X amount of thousands of dollars, to spend $10,000 or $15,000 by putting your own maybe 10,000 litre tank in, plus a pump that doesn't rely on power, because usually the first thing that happens when there's a big fire, the power goes out. And that proved itself that day, as it did back in February. I think it was off 4 days nearly. Some people down Waterhole, their power comes in from the other end. They had probably 3 or 4 days without power this time. So you need to have a power of your own. And a generator is another way of running electrical equipment and keeping a freezer going, the important bits around your house, fridge and freezer.
Yep.
And then you talk about a camera system, maybe if you're getting pretty flash, and then you can maybe have a phone that will switch on and switch off your water or your fire prevention system.
And so if somebody was interested in that, just even maybe it seems really exorbitant, but maybe they're in the ballpark, they could think about maybe going step by step. They can talk to you about that, and then might help them do some research or something.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that do that. There's Steve's good at it. He's got a ring main around his property. Also, up at Horsham, just near the Toyota place, there's Wimmera, can't remember, that do water systems as well.
Yep.
And they're the sort of people you need to go and talk to, so you get a system that's linked, managed well. And unfortunately, you've got to spend a few dollars, but if you want to be self-reliant, that's what you've got to do.
It's good, really good thought to put out there. Maybe just pivoting a little bit here. So it came up in the PPA meeting that I went to. It was a great meeting, going through lots of different things that are happening. One of the things that you spoke about was the proposition to get a digital sign for the CFA that would sit and could perhaps be multi-purpose. Do you want to talk us through that? Just because I think people might come across, there will be some planning permits probably put in, and then people can respond. I think it'd be really good to hear from you about the benefits of this proposal.
Yeah, we've been at the Pomonal CFA. We've got a wish list. It's pretty long, but on that wish list is we've got for what they call a variable messaging screen. It's a board, and it's something that would face both ways and have it on the station ground just next to the footpath, but actually on station ground. There's a whole heap of hurdles we're going through at the moment as to whether we're allowed to have it, the speed zoning it's in, the size of the lettering on the messaging board so that you can actually read it, the amount of lines on the messaging board, so that as you're going past you've got time to read the message. We have to have a permit from council to do that, so it limits the size of the screen, so it won't be, like a McDonald's sign. It'll be 1.5 metres by 1 metre on one side and the same on the other. So it'll read in both directions.
Yep.
And we can change that ourselves either by phone or from a computer in the... so the total size of the screen can't exceed 3 square metres. And we'll probably stick to yellow, although we have done some research on coloured as well. What else is on that? We weren't intending to run that as a dazzle board all night long. What would go on that would be things like today's fire danger is low, not like a typical CFA board, but just start ramping up. Today's fire danger is high. Today's fire danger is extreme. Think about enacting your plan.
Yeah. Okay.
Just good, sensible messaging.
And so in the off season, could it have little things like think about preparing your land for fire season?
Yeah. Round about when daylight saving finishes, is it? Or when it starts, we have one that changed the smoke alarm battery in your house. So we'd put things like that on.
Yeah,
just
perfect.
little things to remind you what to do.
Yeah, the sort of jobs that you just don't think about doing,
Yeah.
and if you got like a little reminder.
And come the end of August or maybe even, about then, about starting to think about clearing up your properties for the summer approaching fire danger period. Just need these little jog-along messages, and I think it's really important, and we don't want it to become like Melbourne where there's dazzle boards everywhere. Pomonal's a quiet little place.
Yeah.
But I think what we've got to look at here and override to a certain degree is we're here to help save lives in the community. We've already seen some of the community leaving and selling up that they can't cope, and we've got to make community number one. And I think by putting a board in like this, we may just be able to help someone one day, and that's a life we can save. On that too, thinking of community, we're always thinking of community, is perhaps we could go community market this Sunday.
Yep. Yeah, so subtle, not over the top.
Yeah.
And would it be capped at night? So like there would be a point where you don't want the lights on to sort of annoy people.
After dark, I think you just turn it off.
Turn it off. Yeah.
Have it on a switch, because Nicole mightn't like us having the dazzle board going right in the front garden. Be practical.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so if people are putting in their concerns, or they see that proposal come through, if they have concerns like, think about what Andrew said, and it might be that, I'd really like it off at 7 p.m. or something like that. If you've got a concern like that, put it in. But let's try to get a conversation going about it. And you can also come down to the CFA and talk to Andrew directly about any concerns you have.
Yep.
Before all that, it's good to sort of meet face to face before doing paperwork.
And Steve's available. He's such a pro volunteer person. David Compton's our secretary. There's a heap of us around. Most of the community will know who we are. We have our community breakfast day. We're about, and I'm trying to get someone to do Christmas in July this year because we missed out on Christmas in December. And all they are is about getting the community together. People love to talk to each other.
Well, Barb Van, she renamed it Shitness.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good.
Yeah.
You got to look at whatever you can do, and that's just the safety and the well-being as much as we can do with our community, because it's so vibrant.
It is. Yeah, we need to safeguard it. So this brings us to the question about Okay, well, there's two things here. So you're in the CFA. This is a bloody long season. And really, on the back of February last year, and then it started so early in summer, and we're still bloody rolling through it. So I've got a question about fatigue in the CFA and volunteers and what people can do to help, but also maybe talk a little bit about the possibilities of people who might be on the periphery thinking about joining the CFA and whether that would be a good thing and what that process is like and any help that could be available. So there's a lot there, but...
Yeah, there is. I think everyone's feeling pretty fatigued at the moment. We have the Vic emergency zone. It's been popping up just about 24/7 for the last 6 weeks, if not longer. For us, probably from February in 2024. But don't disregard it. As each one comes up, look at the fine print because it's actually got information in there that's timely and will give you some ideas. A classic of that was yesterday afternoon when the smoke column reared up after about 3 o'clock, 3:15 yesterday afternoon, when the lower Grampians fire started running and joining the Wallaby Rocks, Sumpsteins fire area. And it took off and it smoked up as a pyrocumulus cloud went up there, and we saw some ash, not light ash here, but fortunately with the easterly it took most of us away, so we had a smoke-free night. But it's been a long year and we do need new volunteers. We've got 3 new starts this year. It's a bit of a process, but as people like me start getting towards falling off the perch at the other end, we need younger people to come and join up and come and see us. Matt Venn, I'll dob Matt in. Matt sort of looks after some of them, mentoring them through, because it's a government organisation. So there we have bureaucrats involved, and there's lots of things you have to do. Some of them, it's a fairly computer-based process, becoming a general firefighter. But Matt he's a good computer operator. I'm sure he'll help you through the hurdles of that, and he's a good fella, and I think he'd be more than happy to do it. Yeah. And it leaves a few of us old bods.
Well, I can attest to that because I'm a member, and I was having a nightmare trying to navigate and work out how to log on and get to things, and he sorted me out big time. So
yeah, it's great. And that's what community's all about. Again, community.
Just ask. People need to ask.
Yeah.
And reach out. So I reckon we've covered a lot of things. Is there any last things that you wanted to add to the discussion?
My role, as I said, is Community Safety Coordinator. And I think I'm not trying to drive it by driving people to do things. I think what we need to do is put it into our own psyche that we think about fire throughout the year, not all the time, but just things that you're doing at home. As I said earlier, where you're planting trees, how your garden's positioned, all those sort of things you've got to think about. Escape routes, where you might go, what you might take, all those things are so important. And it's hard when you go away and the roads are closed for 3 or 4 days till they've been deemed safe again, and you can't come home, and that's just soul destroying. And so for someone who has stayed home, they're on their own for 3 or 4 days as well. So we've got to get away from that situation somehow. But the way the weather is at the moment, the way the fires have been since 2003, I've been involved in a major fire every 3 years, 2003, 2006, 2009. The Mount Lubra fire in 2006, I wasn't here, but it was a massive fire, burnt out, I think, in excess of 180,000 hectares of the Gramps and surrounds. At this stage, the environment's just so dry. And here we are, is the 5th of February. If we don't get rain, this season could go on into March and April. And so what you need to be is still remain alert. Don't drop the ball. Don't be alarmed, just be alert all the time. And those days when you're sitting inside and it's bloody hot, every now and then hop up, walk outside, have a look around, have a sniff with your nose, smoke detector. Yeah, don't get stuck inside a house with the air conditioning on, because it can be on your doorstep before you know it. That's the main safety thing for me.
Wonderful. Well, it's been fantastic having you on the podcast. Been trying to line you up for quite a while, Andrew. I finally got you here, so it's good.
That's because the fire dangers period, or the weather and the fires.
Well, that's right. Today's probably the best weather we've had so far for a while, although a bit windy, which is great.
Pomonal doing its Pomonal thing.
All right.
Righto.
Oh, I'll see you later.
Thanks, James.
No worries.